here's the overview for my presentation. First, we will talk about what is tuberculosis, the two types of tuberculosis, latent TB and TB disease, the connection between HIV and tuberculosis, the history, the effects, treatments, the spread of tuberculosis, the experiment used to see the spread of tuberculosis, the prevention, and the future. So, what is tuberculosis? Tuberculosis is a bacterial disease caused by the bacterium Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And in this picture, you can see the bacterium infecting part of the body. Bacteria are single-celled organisms that can live in water, plants, soils, animals, and humans. They are capable of growing and multiplying by the process of reproduction and can cause infections when they enter a part of the body. Mycobacterium tuberculosis is a bacterium that requires oxygen to grow and produce. The cell wall of Mycobacterium tuberculosis has fatty substances which create a hard shell around the outside of the cell. This hard exterior acts as a barrier and can sometimes prevent antibiotics from doing their job by curing it. Tuberculosis is an airborne disease. An airborne disease is any disease that can be spread as easily as exhaling. So you can spread any airborne disease by simply talking, coughing, sneezing, or even singing. Tuberculosis is the second leading cause of death by infection, with HIV/AIDS being the first. Most cases of tuberculosis happen in third world countries such as sub-Saharan Africa and countries in Asia. 2 billion people today are currently affected with tuberculosis, but only about 10% of the 2 billion actually express the disease. So here in this picture, you can see this person right here is infected with the bacterium Mycobacterium tuberculosis. They actually have the disease, and once they exhale, they're releasing particles that can then go into the air. And these particles contain pieces of the bacterium. And once another person comes along, when they inhale, the bacteria is able to enter their body and infect their body just as easily when one person exhales and another person inhales. So as I said before, there are two types of tuberculosis, latent TB and TB disease. Latent TB is known as the inactive state of tuberculosis. It's simply when the bacterium lives inside of the body. In latent TB, you don't experience any of the symptoms of tuberculosis, nor is it contagious. But if left untreated, latent TB can turn into tuberculosis disease. Tuberculosis disease is known as the active state of tuberculosis. It's when the bacterium is continuously multiplying and reproducing inside of the body. Once you are diagnosed with tuberculosis disease, you are then officially sick with TB. Tuberculosis disease affects the immune system because when the growing bacteria, bacteria is continuously growing and multiplying, and it becomes harder for the immune system to fight off the growing bacteria. HIV and tuberculosis. Human immunodeficiency virus, also known as HIV, is a disease in which the white blood cells are broken down and the immune system is destroyed. People who have had HIV are much more susceptible to TB than others because in HIV, the immune system is destroyed, and in tuberculosis, when the bacteria is continuously growing, if you have already had HIV, which causes a weak immune system, the immune system is not able to fight off the bacteria as well as it could. So here's a picture just showing tuberculosis and HIV causing double trouble. It says people with HIV infection face a greater risk of also developing tuberculosis. Don't take chances, get tested, because it is much worse to have both diseases instead of one disease alone. So, the history of tuberculosis. Tuberculosis has been around for a very long time, and an ancient Greek philosopher, Hippocrates, studied tuberculosis. He believed that tuberculosis was caused by a disease in the lungs. Back then, in Greek times, they did not know anything about bacteria or microorganisms, so Hippocrates believed that this disease was hereditary. Since Hippocrates was such a great philosopher, many people also believed his statement that it was hereditary. Another Greek philosopher, believed that tuberculosis was only for specific body types and could only form in people who were tall, skinny, and were pale. Galen, another Greek philosopher, believed that TB was spread across the air from person to person. His belief, however, was eventually proven to be true. The symptoms of tuberculosis are fever, night sweats, abnormal weight loss, loss of appetite, and in the respiratory system are coughing up blood and sputum and chest pains. The treatment used to treat tuberculosis are usually antibiotics and multiple antibiotics. They are usually administered over a long period of time, such as 6 to 9 months. The antibiotics work to kill the bacteria inside of the body to prevent the bacteria from growing and multiplying even more. Multiple antibiotics are used to ensure that all the bacteria is killed. Since Mycobacterium tuberculosis grows very quickly, the immune system isn't able to fight it off as well, so multiple antibiotics are used to ensure that all the bacteria is killed. Bacteria can easily become resistant to one antibiotic alone, so it's critical that multiple antibiotics are used so all the bacteria can be removed from the body. If antibiotics are not taken over a correct amount of time, or not enough antibiotics are taken, the bacteria can either become resistant to that particular antibiotic or may become resistant to treatment. And when it becomes resistant to that particular antibiotic, more antibiotics need to be used, but those antibiotics can be less effective and more expensive. Latent TB is very important to cure because it is the first step before the tuberculosis disease. Since latent TB is when the bacteria is living in the body, it's better to destroy the infection right before the infection turns into the disease. But luckily for us, latent TB is fairly easy to cure, and these are the antibiotics used to treat latent TB. Tuberculosis disease is also very important to cure because since tuberculosis is a contagious disease, it's better to stop it from happening instead of spreading it around. And these are the antibiotics used to treat tuberculosis disease. So, it has been said that the amount of people coming from other countries contributes to the amount of new cases of tuberculosis per year. In 2009, an experiment was conducted to see if the number of immigrants and refugees affected with tuberculosis contributed to the spread of tuberculosis around the United States. There are about 400,000 immigrants and about 60,000 refugees each year that come to the United States. So this experiment was done to see if they were affected with tuberculosis, and if they were, how many new cases of tuberculosis there were per year caused by the immigrants and refugees. So, the CDC, the Center for Disease and Control, is aware of every medical status of every immigrant and refugee coming into America. And for this medical status, it includes a screening and a follow-up evaluation as soon as they come into America. The researchers looked up the information collected by the CDC and then found their results. From 1999 to 2005, they found that there were 26,075 smear-negative cases of tuberculosis. Smear-negative cases of tuberculosis were cases in which the tuberculosis was shown to be active inside of the body. They also found that there were 22,716 cases of inactive TB in which the bacteria had just entered the body and caused an infection. Here in this diagram, you can see that most cases of had, not most cases, but a lot of refugees contributed to the spread of new tuberculosis cases around America, and that there were some smear-negative cases down here in which there was active tuberculosis inside of the body that contributed to the amount of new cases of tuberculosis per year. The conclusion drawn from this case was if screening for tuberculosis and follow-up evaluations were required for everyone coming into America, this could greatly decrease the amount of tuberculosis cases per year caused by immigrants and refugees. The most effective way way to prevent tuberculosis now is to determine who has the disease or infection and treat the patient as quickly as possible. Because if not treated, patients diagnosed with tuberculosis disease can affect about 15 other people per year. So the future of tuberculosis. In 1998, researchers found that the complete gene sequence of the tuberculosis bacteria. By finding this out, they were able to find out how the bacteria infected people and how the bacteria was able to become resistant to certain antibiotics and medications. So scientists hope that this discovery will provide a better way to treat tuberculosis, as in new antibiotics that do not have to be taken over a long period of time, or antibiotics that the bacteria cannot become resistant to. So here's my bibliography, and thank you for listening. Any questions? Yes, Maria?
You said that one of the symptoms was talking about blood and sputum. What is sputum?
Sputum is a form of mucus found in the body. Yes, Kyle?
Does age affect the risk of getting tuberculosis?
It doesn't infect, it can affect the risk actually. Because of HIV and AIDS, which destroys the immune system, if you get tuberculosis, the bacteria is continuously growing inside of you, and when the bacteria enters your body, it's latent TB, but when it goes to the TB disease, it's an active tuberculosis. So when the bacteria is continuously growing inside of you and growing at a rapid pace, it becomes harder for the immune system to fight it off since it was already damaged by HIV/AIDS. Ms. Lau?
Why do you think tuberculosis is more prevalent in third world countries than other countries?
Because the people in third world countries may not be able to afford the antibiotics, and if they are, they may not be taking it over a long enough period of time that the antibiotics prescribed need to be taken over a long period of time, so they may not have the education needed to know that they need to take it for a long period. Ms. Lau?
Okay, so I know you told us the preventative measures for for example, a developed country like the United States to screen TB and stuff like that. So what are some preventative measures or public health measures that organizations can take to help diminish the number of TB cases in third world countries?
Well, they can educate people about tuberculosis and know that it is an airborne disease and that it can be spread very easily. So if they tell people that it is an airborne disease, that hopefully they'll know that it is contagious and can be spread very easily.
I just thought of it. In your research, did you ever come across a TB vaccine?
Yes, I did BCG, but I did not